Good afternoon and welcome to IBA News this Tuesday, the 13th of December. I'm Elon Aslan-Levy and we're live from Jerusalem. The heavy downpour that continues to fall across much of the country is wreaking widespread havoc. A 72-year-old man was pronounced dead this morning after his car got stuck in a flooded underpass near Kiryat Atta. The man was taken in critical condition to the Rambam Medical Center, where paramedics and doctors, unable to resuscitate him, declared him dead from hypothermia. The north has so far been hit the hardest, with torrential rains causing much flooding and a series of traffic accidents. The multi-car pileup along Route 90 just outside of Rosh Pinah left 11 people injured, including one woman in serious condition. The flooding left many drivers trapped for several hours, some of whom sat waiting on the rooftops of their vehicles until emergency fire and rescue workers managed to safely evacuate them. Many roads in the Haifa area have been blocked off due to the flooding. The wintry precipitation is expected to spread towards the center of the country. Winds are expected to intensify and snow is expected to fall on Mount Hermon. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu embarked on a two-day visit to Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan this morning, accompanied by his wife Sarah and a delegation of government officials. Israel plans to sell anti-missile defense technology to the Shia-majority Central Asian state, and the visit is raising the ire of Baku's neighbor Iran. In Baku, Netanyahu met with President Ilham Heydar Aliyev. The two leaders held a closed-door private discussion for 2 hours, in the course of which they signed a number of bilateral agreements. Later, Netanyahu will meet with members of the local Jewish community before flying to Kazakhstan for the first visit by an Israeli premier to that Central Asian Muslim republic. In Astana, Netanyahu will discuss the strategic and economic cooperation between the two countries, which have flourished since the establishment of diplomatic ties some 24 years ago. Kazakhstan is a vital oil supplier to Israel, which provides it in turn with military technology and counter-terrorism assistance. Netanyahu will return to Israel on Thursday. Residents in the southern Negev were sent scurrying to shelters and security rooms this morning after a red color alert siren sounded in the Ramat HaNegev region. The army said it was investigating the incident. Hours later, it was revealed that a rocket fired from the Sinai Peninsula had exploded inside the Sinai and failed to penetrate Israel. The Sinai Peninsula has become a hotbed of terror, with terrorists affiliated with the Islamic State waging attacks against Egyptian military forces seeking to rout out the insurgency. Prime Minister Theresa May of the United Kingdom gave a stridently pro-Israel speech at the Conservative Friends of Israel annual lunch, attended by 800 people, including Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister Tzipi Hotovely. May hailed Israel as a remarkable country, a thriving democracy, a beacon of tolerance, an engine of enterprise, and an example to the rest of the world for overcoming adversity and defying disadvantages. Speaking only a month after the British Middle East minister declared that Britain would neither celebrate nor apologise for the Balfour Declaration, the British Premier said the government would mark with pride the upcoming centenary of that historic document. Prime Minister May said that Israel would be crucial to Britain as it leaves the European Union and seeks to forge a new role for itself on the world stage, denouncing the anti-Israel boycott movement as unacceptable and saying her government would have no truck with those who subscribe to it. May denounced the increase in anti-Semitism in the UK, specifically singling out the opposition Labour Party and their hard-left allies, and announcing that Britain was going to adopt a formal definition of anti-Semitism in order to combat the phenomenon. In Amona, Education Minister Naftali Bennett is keeping tight-lipped about a new plan to keep the families on the same hill after the court ordered demolition of the illegal outpost, which must happen no later than the first day of Hanukkah. Speaking at yesterday's Jewish Home Faction meeting, Bennett touted the new proposal, which he wishes to present to the residents first before the media, as having longer prospects and more room for expansion than the government's old plan to move the residents to nearby Palestinian absentee property, which was thwarted by a legal appeal by Yesh Din. Bennett urged the residents of Amona not to violently resist the impending court-ordered evacuation. Is US President-elect Donald Trump planning to make good on his campaign promise to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? According to Trump's senior aide, Kellyanne Conway, the issue is a very big priority for the president-elect. Speaking in a radio interview, Conway said Trump repeatedly stressed the idea during his campaign and that she herself heard him repeat it several times during private discussions after his election. The top Republican aide said it is something that our friend Israel, a great friend in the Middle East, would greatly appreciate and something that a lot of Jewish Americans have expressed preference for. Reacting to the reports, Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat thanked Trump for what he called his commitment to strengthen the capital by moving the US embassy home to Jerusalem. Previous American presidents have made the same promises, but later backed away in light of the diplomatic sensitivity. In 1995, Congress passed an act which declared Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, requiring the American embassy to move there. But since the bill's passage, each and every president of the United States has signed a waiver every 6 months, delaying its implementation. A poster showing the head of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with a hangman's noose over his face hung in the stairwell of the capital's Bezalel Academy of Art and Design has drawn harsh criticism from across the political spectrum. Hours after it caused an uproar, the poster was removed. Culture and Sports Minister Miri Regev called to cancel all funding to the art school, saying freedom of art is not freedom to incite. Opposition leader Isaac Herzog condemned the poster, saying there is no place to use freedom of expression to incite to harm public officials. Yesh Atid party leader Yair Lapid said the poster was an ugly and dangerous attempt trying to grab headlines through violence. A statement released by Bezalel Students' Union said that while it opposes all calls for violence or incitement, it believes in the freedom of expression and art within the boundaries of the law. It was later claimed the picture was part of a series including slain Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, exploring the theme of incitement rather than engaging in it. After a delay of some 6 hours due to bad weather, Israel received last night its first 2 F-35 stealth fighter jets at long last. They flew into the Nevatim airbase in the Negev, where the nation's leaders and commanders were on hand to greet the new arrivals. More from IBA's Aria O'Sullivan.
It was supposed to have happened in the daylight before thousands of invited guests, but in the end, the stalwarts who remained were treated to the historic landing of a pair of F-35 jets. President Reuven Rivlin, together with IAF Commander Major General Amir Eshel, attached the Blue Star of David insignia onto the first jet and officially welcomed them to the Israeli arsenal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israel's long arm just got longer and more powerful. Only strength creates deterrence, only strength brings respect, and only strength brings peace, he said. He added that anyone who thinks of attacking us will be attacked, and anyone who thinks of annihilating us will be destroyed themselves. For Lockheed Martin, the aircraft manufacturers, the delay was bad enough for their image, but by evening it got worse. President-elect Donald Trump blasted the cost of the stealth fighter jet program, saying it was too high.
I just see things that's so incredible. You look at the F-35 program, with the money, the hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's out of control. And the people that are making these deals for the government, they should never be allowed to go to work for these companies. You know, they make a deal like that, and then a year later or 2 years later or 3 years later, you see them working for these big companies that made the deal. I'm going to put a very, lobbyists I'm doing. This is bigger than the lobbyists.
This sent stocks falling, but Lockheed Martin officials in Israel tried their best to rebuff the blow.
Yeah, so I certainly welcome the opportunity to address any question that the president-elect would have about the program. It's an amazing program. Lockheed Martin and its industry partners understand the importance of affordability for the F-35 program. And since the beginning, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to reduce the price of the airplane, left more than 70% from its original LRIPs. And we are projected to be at $85 million in the 2019 or the 2020 timeframe. When we get to $85 million, the F-35 will be less expensive than any fourth-generation fighter in the world.
But that's America's issue. For Israel, receiving what will eventually become 2 squadrons of these fourth-generation jets is a landmark day for Israeli-U.S. relations and a notch up for Israel's qualitative edge in the Middle East.
During my time as Secretary of Defense, I've traveled across this nation, from the northern border under threat from Hezbollah to Nevatim here in the south today. And during these visits, I've seen firsthand some of the threats you face daily from many different directions. That's one of the many reasons why the United States is committed to providing Israel with the most advanced military capables, critical not only to ensure Israel can defend itself, but also to maintain its qualitative military aid.
Now that they are in Israel's hands, they are being prepared with Israeli avionics to make them operational, with pairs arriving every few months until a full squadron is ready. Aria O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Fatah Television broadcast a music video promoting violent resistance 72 times over November, according to the Palestinian Media Watch. The The music video on Fatah's Auda TV channel uses black and white footage of Fatah terrorists in training and shows Yasser Arafat handing out rifles and urging a mass revolutionary war of the masses. Separately, the watchdog finds that during the recent Fatah Congress, official Palestinian Authority TV aired 11 times a different music video calling to slice open the enemy's chest and fire machine guns and mortars. At that Congress last month, the winner of the vote for the Fatah Central Committee was convicted terrorist Marwan Barghouti, who is serving multiple life sentences for the murders of 4 Israelis and a Greek monk during the Second Intifada. As Syrian regime forces announced they were close to declaring victory in eastern Aleppo, reports of mass crimes against humanity emerged from inside the former rebel-held areas, saying forces loyal to President Bashar Assad were involved in mass executions of civilians in the city streets and reports of civilians being burned alive. According to reports, over 180 people were executed by pro-government forces after seizing control of the rebel-held neighborhoods. Alarmed by the unverified reports of atrocities in Syria's second-largest city, outgoing UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon instructed his special envoy to Syria to immediately contact all parties concerned. Residents of East Aleppo, meanwhile, sent out desperate messages on social media calling on the international community to save civilians trapped in the besieged districts of the city still controlled by opposition forces. Already on Monday, Syrian state television reported that government forces and their allies had gained control of more than 90% of Aleppo, reducing the rebel territory to a small sliver packed with civilians and rebel forces still coming under constant fire. Antonio Guterres, former Prime Minister of Portugal, has been sworn in as the next United Nations Secretary-General and is due to take office on the 1st of January. In a speech before the General Assembly yesterday, Guterres said one of his top priorities will be to rebuild the trust between governments and the people and to promote gender parity within the UN. In the coming days, the 67-year-old former Portuguese official is expected to announce the appointments of a Deputy Secretary-General and his Chief of Staff. Guterres is the first former head of government to be elected to run the world body after beating 12 other candidates.
Fear is driving the decisions of many people around the world. And we must understand their anxieties and meet their needs without losing sight of our universal values. It is time to reconstruct relations between people and leaders, national and international. Time for leaders to listen and show that they care about their own people and about the global stability and solidarity on which we all depend. And it's time for the United Nations to do the same, to recognize its shortcomings and to reform the way it works. The organization is the cornerstone of multilateralism and has contributed to decades of relative peace. But the challenges are now surpassing our ability to respond. The UN must be ready to change.
The launching of the new Israel Broadcasting Corporation, known in Hebrew as the Ta'agid, has once again been put off, this time to the 30th of April 2017. This further to a last-minute agreement between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who also holds the communications portfolio, and Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon. It came in response to a petition filed with the High Court, which demanded the government stop zigzagging between the new Broadcasting Corporation and the existing Israel Broadcasting Authority, which it originally sought to dismantle. Last month, Netanyahu and Kahlon set up a joint committee to decide whether it was economically preferable to shut down the IBA and launch the IBC, or rather abort the IBC and rehabilitate the IBA. However, the committee failed to come up with recommendations, and opponents of the government's indecision took the issue to court, which demanded a clear date for action. Lawmakers are looking into the possibility of decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana. Senior representatives from the National Anti-Drug Authority presented members of the Knesset Special Committee on Drug and Alcohol Abuse with an alternative to the status quo, modelled on the Portuguese experience, whereby possession of up to 25 grams of cannabis would not be treated as a criminal offence, and offenders would undergo some form of admonition or treatment. Head of the anti-drug agency, Eitan Gorni, stated that while in the past the anti-drug authority had placed much emphasis on stiff criminal penalties to deter users, there are other alternatives to reduce marijuana use, such as education and better health treatment for users. Basing its conclusions on a Portuguese model for tackling drug use, the anti-drug authority's chief scientist explained that punishment should be administrative rather than criminal. Committee chair Mk Tamar Zandberg of Meretz supported the new position, saying legalization of cannabis was only a matter of time. Earlier this year, both Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan and Health Minister Yaakov Litzman torpedoed a bill that sought to decriminalize possession of up to 15 grams of marijuana back then, warning that it would dramatically increase traffic accidents. The legal advisor to the Knesset is warning that the Finance Committee might not make the pre-Hanukkah deadline for passing the 2017-2018 state budget next week. In a letter to Knesset Speaker, legal advisor Eyal Yinon said the Finance Committee, which has primary responsibility for the budget, has yet to finalize a number of contested matters, including the controversial tax on 3 or more homes proposed by Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon. The advisor recommended waiving several proposals in the Economic Arrangements Bill or postponing approval of the budget to the beginning of next year. The official deadline for the budget is the 31st of December, but the date was advanced this year due to the Hanukkah holiday, which this year falls in the last week of December. The deadline can technically still be postponed till March, but if the budget is not passed by then an election must be held. Visitors in Jaffa are in for a treat. The original seal of Sultan Abdul Hamid II on the old clock tower has been renovated and returned to its place. Antiquities Authority preservationists repaired the cracked and crumbling marble plaque and returned it to its original site. The clock tower was one of 7 erected in the Holy Land in 1903 to mark the 25th anniversary of the reign of the last Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. In finance, the shekel is mixed and the stock exchange is up. Weather, more rain tomorrow, I'm afraid, this time spreading from the north and coast to cover the whole country with storms from the north and all the way to the Negev. Expect a significant drop in temperatures and flash floods, with rain weakening in the afternoon. And that's all for today. Join me again tomorrow. Until then, it's a good evening from Jerusalem.